Hey guys, this is day 2 of ratios. We are going to talk about what a ratio actually is today, and I'm going to show you some ways to set that up with bar modeling and with numbers. Okay, let's take a look at your notes that hopefully you have. They should say day 2 notes at the top, and there's like a 3 and a ratio. My PowerPoint's going to follow your notes, although it's not going to look exactly the same, but I'll try to kind of clue you into where you are at in your notes just to make sure that you're following along. Okay, we have Susan and Mary bought a present which cost $50. Susan, being the elder sister, paid a bigger share of the cost. We're going to take a look at Susan's share first. Susan paid 3 units of $10. You guys, I'm sure, can look at that in front of you and see right away that Susan paid $30. But we have split that up into units of $10 and she paid 3 of them. Mary, being the younger, paid 2 units of $10. Okay, so can we all see that all of those units together equal $50? Susan has 3 units of 10 and Mary has 2 units of 10. We can also show how Susan and Mary share the cost like this. Now you're looking at a bar model, the whole thing of which represents $50. So we just stuck Susan's 3 shares together with Mary's 2 shares. Now we have 5 units that equal $50. So little Sally Singapore there is thinking to herself, Susan and Mary share the cost unequally. Susan shares 3 units, Mary shares 2 units. Each unit is equal to $10. I bet you could also look at that bar model that represents $50 and see that it's split into 5 and work backwards and see that each unit would be equal to $10. Here's another way that we could represent this. We could show Susan's 3 units like you see on top, and then show Mary's 2 units on the bottom. And now we just drew a ratio. And if we were to write that as a sentence, we would say the ratio of Susan's to Mary's share is 3 to 2. I like to write Susan to Mary and abbreviate that next to my ratios to help me out. So now if we write the ratio of Mary's to Susan's share, you have that on your notes underneath where it says Susan's to Mary's share. Now we're going to look at this, and we want to compare Mary's share to Susan's. So we would write that the ratio of Mary's to Susan's share is 2 to 3. Now we've got Mary to Susan. Now don't forget, you guys, when we're writing these ratios, we are showing relationship. The ratios themselves are not quantities or numbers. They just show number of units, so we don't use labels with them. Okay, let's turn the page. All right, now we're going to look at some bananas and some apples and some oranges, and my bananas are peeled and your bananas on your notes are not, but you know what? They're the same. It's okay. All right. Let's look at the ratio of the number of bananas to the number of apples. You can see on your notes and also on my PowerPoint that we have 3 bananas and we have 4 apples. If we want to look at bananas to apples, we would be looking at a ratio of 3 to 4. So that's my top sentence. Okay, now let's look at the ratio. Oh, I have a spelling error. Sorry, guys. The ratio of the number of oranges to the number of bananas. Now I want to go oranges to bananas, and you can see we have 5 oranges on our screen, right? So I'm going to write 5 to 3. So the ratio of the number of oranges to the number of bananas is 5 to 3. Okay, now we're looking at the ratio of the number of bananas to the number of apples to the number of oranges. We had 3 bananas, 4 apples, and 5 oranges, so our ratio is going to be 3 to 4 to 5. Okay, let's switch the order up a little bit, and now let's look at the ratio of the number of apples to the number of bananas to the number of oranges. And just to help myself, I'm going to write the abbreviation of what I'm looking for underneath here. So apples to bananas 2 oranges, and we had 4 apples, 3 bananas, and 5 oranges. So our ratio is going to be 4 to 3 to 5. Okay, now we're going to look at that next little section. It's number 2 on your notes. And we're looking at apples, pears, and I don't know what those are. Those are mangoes, apparently. Okay, so let's look at the number of pears to the number of mangoes. Okay, check it out, guys. You have a lot more than 3 pears and 4 mangoes on your page, don't you? Okay, so what we're doing now is we are talking about units, and we're not talking about individual items. So let's look at units of pears. Okay, so if I look at the rows of pears, I can see that I have 3 rows, right? I have actually 3 units of 4 pears each, but it's just, we're going to call that 3 units. And then if I look at my rows of mangoes here, I have 4 units of 4 mangoes. So my ratio of the number of pears to the number of mangoes is 3 to 4. So I'm just counting units, and I have 1, 2, 3 units here, 1, 2, 3, 4 units there. All right. Okay, let's look at the let's look at the ratio of the number of apples to the number of pears to the number of mangoes this time. So hopefully you can look at this picture and you can see that I have 2 units of apples. 1, 2. I still have 3 units of pears, and I still have 4 units of mangoes. So my ratio of the number of apples to pears to mangoes is 2 to 3 to 4. Okay, flip your page on your notes, and now we're looking at number 3. So we have a problem. Now we don't have a picture to help us this time, so we're going to have to do this a little bit differently. There are 35 red beads and 45 green beads. We want to find find the ratio of the number of red beads to the number of green beads. So, how many red beads do we have? And we're going to find this right here, red beads to green beads. We have 35 red beads and 45 green beads, so I'm going to write that like 35 to 45. But we want to write this ratio in its simplest form, and right now it's not written in its simplest form. So hopefully you remember from yesterday that when we want to simplify a ratio or a fraction, we need to look at the greatest common factor between the numbers. So we're going to look at our smaller number, which is 35, and we're going to look at the factors. Ooh, I think I'm going to run out of room here. Hang on. We're going to look at the factors of 35, and then we're going to find one that 45 can be divided by. So I have 1, 35, 5, and 7, and I think that's it. And 35 is out of the running because 45 is not divisible by 35. 7's out of the running, so we're going to go with 5. So if we divide both 35 and 45 by 5, we're going to get 7 to 9 because 35 divided by 5 is 7, and 45 divided by 5 is 9. And so that's our ratio in its simplest form. All right, let's look at letter B on your page. It says, find the ratio of the number of red beads to the number of green beads to the total number of beads. So first of all, do we know what the total is? I mean, I guess we do because we have 35 and 45, right? So we can total that up. If we add them together, we get 80 beads. So if I want to find red to green, I'm really having problems with my pen here. Sorry, guys. If I want to find red to green to total, I'm going to say 35 to 45 to 80. But that's, of course, not my simplest form. Since we've already factored 35, we're going to remember that 5 was a common factor between 35 and 45. 80 is conveniently also divisible by 5. So we're going to divide all 3 of those numbers by 5 to find the simplest form. So 35 divided by 5 was 7. 45 divided by 5 was 9. And 80 divided by 5 is 16. So my ratio in its simplest form is 7 to 9 to 16. All right, David had $240. I'm looking at number 4 on your page now. He spent $40 on food, $120 on books, and saved the rest. Find the ratio of the amount of money spent on food to the amount of money spent on books to the amount of money saved. First, okay, so this is a multi-step problem, right? The first thing we need to know is what information do we have here? We know what he spent on food, we know what he spent on books, but we don't necessarily know how much he saved unless we do the subtraction. Now you guys have the subtraction in your notes right there. You've got a little girl thinking about the savings. Oh, David had $240, and then he spent $40 on food, and then he spent another $120, so I need to subtract. So you're going to subtract 40 from 240, then subtract $120, and we're going to get $80. So our ratio then is 40 to 120 to 80. Of course, that's not simplified, so looks to me like we can definitely divide all of those by 10. And actually, it looks to me like we can divide all of those by 20. So let's go ahead and do that. So actually, we can divide them all by 40. So if we divide 40 by 40, we get 1. If we divide 120 by 40, we get 3. And if we divide 80 by 40, we'll get 2. So our ratio is 1 to 3 to 2. All right, let's do another one. A rectangle measures 60 centimeters by 40 centimeters. Find the ratio of the length to the width to the perimeter of the rectangle. All right, you guys already have a model drawn there for you. So there it is again on your screen. Our length and our width are 60 and 40. So we don't yet know the perimeter. If we're gonna write a ratio of length to width to perimeter, we've got to have that number, right? So we need to do a little bit of addition. So whenever we are finding perimeter, we're finding the whole distance around something. In this case, it's just a rectangle. It could be a yard, it could be a house, who knows. But we have 4 sides to deal with. So since we know the long sides are 60, let's fill those into, and the short sides are 40, fill those in. We're going to have to add all those up. So we're going to add up 60 plus 40 plus 60 plus 40, and here it is down here. And that's going to equal 200 centimeters. Okay, so now we're ready to write our ratio. Okay, and you can see there that we have our ratio of 60 to 40 to 200. Again, that was length to width to perimeter. So that 60 to 40 to 200 is not in its simplest form. I already have that written for you over here, but let me show you how I got there. So we need to do some division, and I'm going to look at this smallest number here to try to figure out what the greatest common factor is that I need to divide all 3 of these by. And I'm not going to factor 40 because I can kind of just look at this and know, since I can't divide 60 by 40, I'm going to have to go to the next greatest factor of 40, which is going to be 20. 20 times 2 is 40, so that's a pretty easy one. And I can just see right off the bat, 60 is divisible by 20, and so is 200. So if I divide all 3 of those by 20, then I would get 3 to 2 to 10. And that is my ratio in its simplest form. Okay, my friends, that's that. Your homework that goes along with this lesson is workbook exercise 8.